knives. That's not a knife. That's a knife. Hey, give me your fucking money. I guess my entire life I've been the guy that will say the stuff that needs to be said that no one else will say. Brett Johnson has actually done some research.
Sorry, I don't have the clapping ready.
I know, right? So why don't you look at the case and maybe, hell, who knows? I'm the guy that's known for saying the shit that no one else will say. Maybe we'll throw some shit up against the wall, see what sticks, and talk about that. You know what? I'll give them everything just as long as they let me have the talk. That shit ain't right. It doesn't work like that at all. And that's okay because, business and being an asshole kind of goes hand in hand. Maybe something wasn't quite, kosher all of a sudden. I'm not saying anything, but I am saying something. Because Hazard, Kentucky, you can bet your ass it's the town of have and have-nots. We're going to turn over every single fucking rock that we can on this. Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States Most Wanted cybercriminal. Criminals come in all shapes and sizes, but they've all got one thing in common. They've all got criminal thoughts. Today's episode, we're talking about the unsolved murder of Roy and Wanda Campbell. Now, why on earth are we talking about that? Back in November of 2010, the day after Thanksgiving, in Hazard, Kentucky, my hometown, Roy and Wanda Campbell were both murdered in their home. That case has remained unsolved through today. Why am I talking about it? Guess what? Roy is my great uncle. This murder has been featured on Dateline. It's been featured on several different podcasts. And today, it's very difficult to find any news articles related to it at all. It seems to be disappearing over time, but this case has remained unsolved. I was asked several months ago by a family member if I would take the time out to look at it and do a show about it, because they thought that, hey, you're that son of a bitch that will say the stuff that no one else will say. So why don't you look at the case and maybe, hell, who knows? Maybe you'll find something or see something or will say something that will resonate with someone. So, that's the thing about me, right? I'm the guy that, I guess my entire life I've been the guy that will say the stuff that needs to be said that no one else will say. I've built a brand around it. When I was a criminal, when I was at top of the criminal heap in the cybercrime world, I was the guy known for doing that. Today, I work on the good guy's side. I'm fortunate enough to work with the FBI. I'm widely respected in cybersecurity. I've got this show that we've just launched. I've got the Brett Johnson show, which we're revamping. So, hey, take the time out. Subscribe to both because I like them both and you'll like them both. I'm the guy that's known for saying the shit that no one else will say. And here's the thing. I don't think that this case is horribly complicated. I really don't. I think if you understand what Eastern Kentucky is, the way it operates, the people there, I think that this case is pretty damn clear. And I think there's a reason that this case has not been solved. And we're going to talk about that through a series of different episodes. Today's episode, we're just going to give an overview of the case, give some ideas, kind of float some shit out there. Maybe we'll throw some shit up against the wall, see what sticks, and talk about that. That's what we're going to be doing. But it's going to be a series of episodes, not in an order, mind you. So today we're recording this episode that's giving an overview. Maybe in a couple of 3 weeks, we'll record another episode, bring someone in to talk to them, see what they think. Maybe we'll reach out to the police and let them turn us down because that's what they're doing these days because they don't want to talk about this shit. But the hope is that we start talking about enough things and someone out there decides that, hey, I know a little something. Maybe I'll contact Brett because I'm going to tell you not to contact the police. I'm going to tell you to contact my ass because I don't see them doing a whole hell of a lot. And from there, I promise you, I'll take care of that shit. That's the hope, is we turn over enough rocks, talk about enough shit that somebody somewhere does something. And we'll see if that works. Now, before we get to the meat of the episode, we're going to check in with Brian, see what he's got for us today.
Actor Idris Elba is calling on Parliament to immediately ban the sale of so-called zombie knives and machetes to reduce the number of young people losing their lives. Zombie knives are defined as weapons having a cutting edge, a serrated edge, and images or words suggesting they are used for violence.
Violence! Ha! So, hey, here's the thing. First of all, I love me some Idris Elba. There will never... He really needs to be James Bond. I understand. You got a whole demographic of society saying, we can't have us no black James Bond. But I'm going to tell you, Idris Elba as black James Bond, shit yeah, that's some shit I'd pay for all day, every day. Idris is talking about knives because here's the thing. Over in the UK, you can't really get any firearms. That's right. All these little street criminals and hoods that are out there, they don't really carry many firearms out there because, hey, they ain't got them. So what do they use? They use some shit to poke you all the time. Knives, and I'm not talking about the little bitty knives. I was actually looking for a knife I've got on this desk here, but I can't find it. I'm talking about knives. You know, that's not a knife. That's a knife. Those kind of knives. That's what I'm talking about. So you go out in London to some of these friggin' parks or out in the country, and you've got these little rugrats on their little friggin' mopeds because they don't know what a fucking muscle car is. So you got the rugrats on the mopeds with the machete. Hey, give me your fucking money. Like that. So Idris is saying, hey, we really need some legislation regarding these knives. Now, here's what's kind of funny about that to me. We're doing that with guns in the United States because you know what? Turns out in the United States, we've got over 300 million guns. We've got more than enough access to guns. And if we want to shoot some motherfucker, we can shoot some motherfucker. So we cry a lot about legislation. And here's the thing. I absolutely agree that crazy people should not have guns or knives or spoons because spoons hurt more, you twit. They shouldn't have that. We do need legislation. I agree with that. Sensible legislation. But at the same time, we need to look at the root causes of why these things are going on. Because you can bet your ass there's a root cause. Back when my dad was in school, they had at JROTC, they had weapons. You would fire them. You were able to take your .22 rifle to school and no one worried about getting shot. These days, your ass can't pull that. So there's been some sort of shift that's happened, some sort of mindset change. So by all means, legislate, by all means. But at the same time, we need to look at the root causes and attack those. And for some reason, the two political parties that are out there, they don't want to do that. Either one doesn't want to legislate and they want to look at the root cause, or the other one wants to legislate and not look at the root cause. Sometimes, somewhere, we've got to get our asses together, get our act together, and do the right damn thing. Brian?
Brett, Meta is making changes to what teens can see when using Instagram and Facebook. The company announced it will start hiding certain types of content on both apps and restrict specific search terms on Instagram. Now, when people search for terms related to self-harm and eating disorders, they will start hiding these related results and direct them to expert resources for help.
All right, so Meta. Let's not forget that when Mark Zuckerberg first set up Facebook, when it was called Facebook, before he changed it to Meta because he had that whole idea that, you know, the metaverse, we're going to get filthy rich on it. And then a year later, the metaverse crashes. Let's not forget that. It used to be called Facebook. All right, it still is if you're on the Facebook. When he first set up Facebook, most people may not realize this, but his famous quote were that people that agreed to sign on to Facebook and would give up all their information were quote unquote fucking idiots. That's what Mark Zuckerberg thinks about it. Now, here's the thing. Yeah, they're finally doing some stuff to protect kids after years of not doing a damn thing. Now, why is that? I'll tell you why that is. Because all of a sudden you've got a lot of Congress people that are sitting there going, you know what? At Facebook, it's really, really messing up the kids. And I think what we need to do is we need to regulate the shit out of Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook, the metaverse, the Instagram, whatever the hell else that dudes are doing. We need to take care of that because you know what? He don't give a shit about us, and he certainly don't give a shit about our kids. So what's happened is all of a sudden, Meta, after all of this pressure, and let's be honest, this pressure has been going on for years as well, Meta has done just the minimum amount so that they can say, we're doing our part in protecting today's children's. Do I buy that bullshit? Absolutely not. They're still gathering data. They're still going to continue to gather data, and they're still going to continue to manipulate people or allow people to be manipulated. That's my thing. Now, in a perfect world, I would say, the best thing you could do is not use the Facebook, not use any social media platform. But let's be honest. I'm not big on Facebook, but I like me that Chinese TikTok. I love that shit, even though I know they're spying on me every single day. I'll give them everything just as long as they let me have the talk. That doesn't mean we can't bitch, moan, and complain about it. So by all means, continue to bitch, moan, and complain. And maybe, just maybe, all that bitch, moaning, and complaining will result in somebody up in Washington hearing it and saying to themselves, we really need to regulate this stuff a little bit better than we've been doing before. All right, so for today, on today's Criminal Insights, we've got a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first, I was asleep the other night, and I had this dream that I was back in prison and that one of my cellmates was being assaulted and sexually assaulted. And in the dream, I did not do anything. Me and the other cellmates turned our backs and did not help this individual. And I woke up, and it disturbed me so much that I could not go back to sleep. And it disturbed me throughout the day that I had that dream. Now, here's the thing about prison that most people don't understand. In most prison facilities, that kind of thing does not happen. I understand that it's known for that, but in most prison facilities, that kind of shit does not go on. I never saw it happen. I served 7.5 years, never saw it happen, never had whispers of it even happening. Okay, so it doesn't really happen like that. Maybe in the higher security levels it does. Maybe in some of these state institutions that are notorious, that kind of thing happens. But the institutions, and I was in a few, the institutions that I was in, that never happened. Now, why am I talking about this on the Criminal Insights segment? And the reason why is, as I was processing through this that day, and subsequent to that day, I've been thinking about this a lot. It really hits me that the power of silence and how that results oftentimes in crimes being successful, not being prosecuted, and victims continuing to be victimized, things like that. That failure to speak up and say something out of fear, out of, you don't want to get involved, out of whatever that is, that failure to say or do something often results in crimes being successful. And oddly enough, that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today in today's meat of the episode. It just hits me that, and it's not only that, but it's also this concept of power, that people who feel powerless or people who are subjugated to an authority, prison guards, what have you, those people tend to accept a level of abuse that they usually would not accept, or a level of victimization that they usually would not accept were it not for that power hierarchy that's in place. And I think you combine those two all of a sudden. You combine that concept of power dynamics with the concept of silence, of not wanting to be involved, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of crime out there that continues to be successful and continues to be perpetrated, and the criminal, the abuser, the predator never has to face consequences. The reason I say that is we really need to get to the point, and people who follow me on LinkedIn, you see me do this, or on Twitter. I'm that guy that I call a lot of shit out. It bothered me to no end. I just had a dream about not acting. We as a society have to get to the point where we are not scared to speak up, speak out, and act on the things that need to be acted upon. There's been cases upon cases throughout history, of recent history, of people being attacked, and the crowds haven't stepped in and done anything about that. You know, we see videos on that. It's been on YouTube, on the talk. That idea of silence, not being involved, and someone in a position of power that results in someone being harmed, there's something horribly wrong with that. That is the first criminal insight of the day. The second criminal insight of the day is this idea of snitches get stitches. That shit ain't right. It doesn't work like that at all. Back a few years ago, after 1987, the federal government, the justice system, they sat their little happy asses down and they said, you know what? All these mobsters that are out there, every one of these damn mobsters, they don't talk. We give them this prison time. They out in a few years. They never say a word. They never sing like birds, anything else like that. We got to change that. So what they did was they revamped the entire justice system and the sentencing guidelines and everything else. So after 1987, your ass didn't get parole anymore in the federal system. Your ass serves 87.7% of whatever you're sentenced to. So that's the first step. The second thing was they came up with this thing called the RICO Act, which means all of a sudden, at the same time revamping the sentencing guidelines, that means that, hey, we're not going to give you nickels and dimes anymore. We're going to give you 25s and 50-cent pieces as far as prison time goes. Let's see what your ass thinks about that, unless you would like to sit down and talk to us a little bit. That resulted in today, in most cases, you will have people that will rat on each other. And I'm going to tell you, the way the federal prison system works, the way prison works overall, is you're either talking or you wish you had talked. Because that's where we are today as far as punishment goes. And everybody feels that way. I know I'm not supposed to talk in absolutes, but everybody feels that way. It's not just the people who are getting handed out 25 and 50-year sentences. It's the people that, 5 or 6 years. Everybody talks, and there's a reason for that. If you look at game theory, who would have thought that Brett Johnson would be talking about game theory today? If you look at game theory, which is strategic decision making, you've got this thing called the prisoner's dilemma. And here's how the prisoner's dilemma works. You've got two guys. They decide that they're going to break into a store, do a nighttime burglary. All right. So they break into the store, they steal all the diamonds, and then they run out. A couple of days later, both these guys are arrested. They're thrown in the county jail. They're separated. So you got one guy at the end of the one wing of the jail, the other guy at the other end of the jail, where they can't communicate with each other. Now here's where it gets interesting. If both guys keep their mouths shut, all right, they don't say anything. If both guys keep their mouths shut, let's say they'll get 3 years apiece. That's the most they're going to get, 3 years apiece. If one guy talks and the other guy doesn't, the guy that talks is going to get maybe a year, year and a half. The guy that doesn't talk, his little stupid ass is going to get 10 to 12 years. If both guys talk, they're going to get 7 years a pop. So what happens? How does that play out? I'll tell you how that plays out. It plays out that both guys talk. Why? Because you've got them both at the end of each other. You got the cops playing each other off of them, and one guy does not know if the other guy is telling. So that one guy doesn't want that 10 to 12 year sentence. So he's sitting there going, shit, I better tell what I need to get my ass out, because that guy ain't my friend. That guy is my associate, and that guy I know I can't trust. So you're going to rat on guys. That's the way this shit works. Game theory is absolutely outstanding when you start to consider strategic decision making, which is what game theory is, when you start to consider that with businesses, with life, with prison sentences, stuff like that. DOJ sat down and they pulled their little asses some really good game theory out. And that's where we're at today. So everyone talks at the end of the day. The only thing you have to figure out is what motivation that individual needs to talk. Is it fear of prison time? Is it wanting to be rewarded? Is it wanting to get revenge? Is it fear of loss? I mean, what is it that causes someone to talk? Now, that being said, we're going to move over into the meat of the episode and see if some of this stuff actually applies to what we're talking about today. On today's episode of Criminal Thoughts, I'm talking to Ronnie Campbell, my first cousin, and we're talking about the unsolved murder of Roy and Wanda Campbell. Happened back November 26, 2010. Here's the thing. I'm going to be doing a series of episodes on this murder. Maybe we'll find out something. Hopefully we'll find out something, but we're going to be bringing people in, talking about different aspects of the case. The first day today, we're just going to do kind of an overview of what happened and have a discussion about that. Ronnie, thank you so much for coming on Criminal Thoughts.
No problem. You're welcome.
No, dude, I don't know how else to start it than that, man. You're my first cousin. It's been a minute
Right.
since I've seen you.
Right. Yeah. This is a little different. We're virtually meeting.
I know, right?
In a virtual world. Yeah.
Exactly. So, hey, I was locked up. I was in federal prison when Roy and Wanda were murdered. And I was talking to my mom on the phone, I guess a couple weeks after that, and she told me what had happened. And I had never really looked at the case until recently. So, hey, man, let's dive into that. What the hell went on?
Well, it was the day after Thanksgiving, 2010. And I guess they had celebrated Thanksgiving. And then that Thanksgiving night, or that Friday after Thanksgiving is when they were found.
Okay.
So it would have been, I guess, you have the dates there.
Right.
It was that Friday night. And a family member had called for a welfare check because somebody had evidently tried to get up with them, and then went down there and the curtains were drawn. And when they get there, the doors are locked from the inside. It doesn't appear to be anything, nefarious from the outside, except the curtains being drawn, which is kind of unusual. And so they called the local PD for a welfare check, and the sheriff's department, I think, is who initially came out.
Right. And
that's when they found them.
Okay. And how did they find them? Do you remember?
They were both sitting in a recliner, and the way the law enforcement described it, it was an execution style killing.
Okay. So, and I took the opportunity leading up to talking to you today of reading everything that I could find and listening to every podcast that I could find. There's only a couple. It turns out that a lot of the news on this story is not around anymore. It's like it's been disappearing over time. But what I was able to find, let me put my glasses on, because I don't know. Yeah, hell, you got glasses too, man. I got to be 46, and I'm not 46 anymore, and I couldn't read anymore. But talking about November 26, 2010, it was determined there was no break-in. There was no robbery. So Roy had $600 cash on him. Wanda, in her purse next to the chair that she was sitting in, had $1,000 cash in that. So there wasn't a robbery. Both individuals were shot in the back. Roy was in his recliner in the reclining position. Wanda was in her recliner, sitting up, feet on the floor. The door was locked. The blinds were pulled. Went from there. So, I mean, that's pretty odd,
The thing that was odd to me is the door was locked from the inside.
Right.
And, so that leads you to believe that whoever did it had the key to, when they left, to lock the door.
Right.
Lock it and pull it shut, but the way it was described to me, it was a deadbolt, and the deadbolt was locked with the key from the outside.
Which means, obviously, someone had to have the key. They left, they locked the damn door, is what happens. And so, I don't remember. I remember, Roy was, I knew Roy to a degree, not to the level that you did or anything like that, but I don't think that Roy would have been the guy to hand out keys to his house to every single person that he met.
Obviously,
Right.
I didn't have a key to it.
No. So we're talking about somebody very close, potentially.
Right.
All right. So, and now what happens is his daughter, June, she's the one that does the wellness check. And she shows up that evening, knocks on the door, notices the blinds are pulled, thinks that that's odd, sits out in the driveway, the park, the driveway for a few minutes. After a while, she starts blowing the horn. No answer. And then picks up the phone and calls her contact at the Perry County Sheriff's Office. She had a personal number for one of the officers there. She calls the guy, and the guy, turns out he's in Florida. He's like, hey, I can't help you, but I'll give you the number of somebody that can. She calls him. He shows up, and they start looking around. And after a while, they go around the house. Blinds are drawn, doors locked. They go around the house, and it was June who peered in through a window and noticed the two bodies sitting upright, or, one reclining, one sitting upright. And at that point, they break the door down and enter in. That's what I've read anyway. Does that sound about right to you?
That's what, like I said, obviously I wasn't there.
Right.
That's what I've been told,
Okay.
through the grapevine and read, from here's obviously even, for this area, that was a serious, piece of murder.
Right.
And, I would have thought that it would have been a lot more publicized than it was.
Well, that's the weird thing, right? I was looking up murder statistics for Hazard, Kentucky. Turns out if you look at the crime rate that's been reported after 2010, it turns out that Hazard is one of the safest cities in Kentucky to live in.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so Ronnie had technical difficulties, which is not surprising. We are talking about Hazard, Kentucky. I'm not sure they've got the best internet service at all. That being said, I was going over some of these statistics for crime rates in Hazard, Kentucky, and it turns out that if you look from 2010 to current, that Hazard is one of the safest places in Kentucky to live. They've only reported a total of 4 murders from 2010 through 2023. And here's the thing, those 2010 murders, not reported, not considered. The other 4 murders that are considered, 3 were in 2013. There was a shooting at Hazard Community College. A guy shot 2 people in a vehicle and injured a third, a 12-year-old who later died as well. Then 2019, there's another murder that happened as well at that point. That's odd. Because I've got to tell you, I'm from Hazard, Kentucky, and we are not a pacifistic lot. All right? Somebody crosses us, we tend to frown on that. I don't really believe that murder rate. Maybe that's correct, maybe not. That being said, it's very odd that the 2010 murders of Roy and Wanda are not considered in on that. Now, we were going over the case, and I was going to talk that over with Ronnie, my cousin, but where he's having technical difficulties, I'm just gonna have to go through that myself and make some comments about that, and maybe we'll find out a thing or two as we go along. So as I mentioned, November 26, 2010, Friday, Roy Campbell and his wife were found murdered by Roy's daughter, June. Okay, what had happened was Roy's first wife, Mildred, she had passed away 3 years prior. She passes away. Roy was already, should I do the quotation marks? Roy was already friends with Wanda at that point. I'm not saying that they were cheating. I'm saying that they knew each other in a very friendly manner. Wanda was married. Roy was married. Wanda's husband passes away. Roy's wife passes away. Wanda moves to Michigan to be with her daughter, Shirley. Now, before I go any further, here's the thing. When someone passes away, society, especially Eastern Kentucky, we are very good about not saying anything bad about people, about almost preaching them from the grave straight to heaven at that point in time. I am not that guy. I'm not. I'm the guy that's going to say the shit that needs to be said. I don't believe in glossing over things. I don't believe in only saying kind things. I believe in saying the truth. Okay, so what happens is Roy and Wanda get married. All right, and they had been married for 3 years. When Roy was murdered, he was 81. Wanda was 79. By all accounts, Wanda was a very good person. She worked as a nurse's aide for over 33 years at Mary Breckinridge Hospital. She helped every single person she could. She took that idea of being a Christian to heart. So she was very kind, loving, forgiving, just from all accounts. I've not found anything at all that suggests Wanda was anything other than an outstanding person. Roy it seems like that when Roy died, that there were a lot of people that wanted to take to heart that idea of, we only speak good of people. That's all we do. We only speak good of people. The truth of the matter is that Roy was an extremely good businessman, an extremely good businessman. The truth of the matter is that Roy was also an asshole a lot of the time. And that's okay because, business and being an asshole kind of goes hand in hand at times. So there's been a few stories like Roy acquired a lot of land. He had been a bread truck driver, had worked himself up to where he was doing, running a bulldozer and finally developing land. And along the way, he acquired a lot of land. The land that he acquired was from relatives of his wife, Mildred. And there have been some stories about that. We won't go into that, but there have been some stories that suggest that maybe something wasn't quite, kosher all of a sudden. Just a few stories about that, but I can't prove anything, not going to bring it up, even though I just brought it up. So Roy gets all this land. Now, he knows or has an idea that there's going to be a major highway coming through part of this land that he's acquired. And he knows that, hey, downtown Hazard ain't got a whole lot of shit down there. What we really need to do is we need to be developing this area where this highway's coming through, because that right there, I own the land, and that right there is going to amount to, well, some businesses and some money in my pocket. So what he does is he starts giving away a lot of the land for the hospital, for some churches, stuff like that. And I know this for a fact. He gives away the land because he knows that if a hospital is installed there, all those supporting businesses around there, they're going to be there. He owns the land they're going to be on, so he's going to make a shit ton of money. So that's how Roy makes a lot of money at that point. And he was very ruthless in a lot of the ways that he dealt with people at that point in time. If you want this land, by God, this is where it's going to be. If Days Inn wants to put a hotel here, guess what? I'm going to own this percent of it. And it was the first time in history that Days Inn had actually relinquished that kind of percent to a businessman and put in a hotel up. First time in history that ever happened. So Roy was a very good businessman. He pissed people off. And Roy was very good about surrounding himself with people who could best be identified as ne'er-do-wells. There were a couple of gentlemen who went by the names of Steve and Ed Lewis, who were known to be less than scrupulous about certain things. So there was this thing around Roy that while he was doing this, he was also a good businessman, but he was also the guy who, while he may have been scrupulous, some of the stuff around him was not. Okay, I remember my mom went to get a D9 bulldozer. She was looking for one because she had talked my stepdad at the time into quitting his job and going into the coal industry. And Roy had a broken down D9 that he was trying to charge them an arm and a leg for. And there were some very colorful conversations that went on around that, less than legal conversations sometimes too. So that element was absolutely there. Absolutely it was. And that should be considered when we're talking about the death of Wanda and Roy. Wanda, there was absolutely no reason to murder Wanda, or maybe there was, and we'll get into that in a minute. All right. But as I pointed out to Ronnie, if you can look at the facts here, there was no break-in at all. Roy was sitting reclined watching the friggin' TV when he was shot in the back. Wanda was sitting in her recliner watching the TV when she was shot, by all accounts. The door was locked. Nothing was broken. Nothing was stolen. So we're not talking about a home invasion. We're not talking about a robbery. We're not talking about somebody following Wanda home or anything else like that. We're talking about somebody that knew both of them, came in the house, and then murdered them, not for whatever money they had in the house, but for some other reason. That's what we're talking about. And what's interesting is, so June, the daughter of Roy, not the daughter of Wanda, the daughter of Roy from the previous marriage with Mildred, June used to go in, she would go down and visit Roy most every day. All right. So the way it reads by June's own account and by law enforcement's account, June went to check on Roy the evening after Thanksgiving. She pulls up there, notices the blinds are drawn, thinks that's strange, at which point she knocks on the door. No answer. Now, this is of an evening. We're talking, this is probably 5, 6 p.m. All right. No answer. Blinds are drawn. She sits out on the driveway for a while, starts blowing the horn. No answer. Now, the blowing the horn is not, my family members have done that before. Okay. So that's not kind of, way out there. She evidently becomes so worried at that point in time that she calls the Perry County Sheriff's Office, a friend of hers, who tells her, I can't take care of it. I'll give you a number of somebody else. She calls him. He comes out. He notices the house. They walk around. Nothing's been broken into, no broken windows, anything else. And then just on one of the pass-bys, June just happens to peer in through a window, see the 2 recliners, see the dead bodies in both recliners, and reacts. Perry County Sheriff's Office at that point in time, they decide that they are not equipped to handle that case. So they call the Kentucky State Police. The Kentucky State Police show up. It's already odd, but here's where things get more odd. The Kentucky State Police go into the home, and the entire investigation lasts for 5 hours. For 5 hours. From 9 p.m. is when the Kentucky State Police show up, and the investigation is over at 2 a.m. At 2 a.m., June has been literally in the carport the entire time. June has been in the carport waiting those 5 hours. 2 a.m., Kentucky State Police come out. They say, hey, the investigation's over. They turn everything over to June at that point in time. They don't come back. There's nothing is ever fingerprinted. No one's ever checked for any type of GSR, gunshot residue. They turn everything over to June. At this point in time, June goes into the home. And what happens? Well, she burns Roy's chair because, I guess it was, by all accounts, it was fucked up. All right. She also cleans the entire home. I'm not saying anything, but I am saying something. She cleans the entire home. Now, while this is all going on, Wanda's daughter, Shirley, she gets the call. Roy and your mom have been murdered. They go, they're holed up at a hotel there in Hazard. After June cleans everything, what happens is Shirley, the daughter, and the husband, they come in, they take some stuff out of the house because June at that point in time is like, you guys can stay here if you want to. They didn't want to stay there. They got a hotel. And she's also, you guys, if there's anything you want to take, you can take that. And so they take some items out of the home. That's the last time that they're ever allowed to take anything out of the home at all. Shirley, Wanda's daughter. And the reason why is, as Shirley is driving back to her home in Michigan, she sees a billboard for rent. And she says to her husband, you know what? What we should do is ask for help for anybody who knows anything. So she rents a billboard looking for information about the murders of her stepfather, Roy, and her mother, Wanda. Not a bad idea. If you've seen the movie 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, outstanding movie, great fucking idea too.
I assume you can't say nothing defamatory and you can't say fuck, piss, or cunt, that right?
Or anus?
So she puts this thing up. What happens is June, Roy's daughter from the first marriage, June gets pissed off, really pissed off. She calls Raising Hell with Shirley. I don't know why you did that. We shouldn't be doing this. No. I'm against it. I'm against it. Not only does June do that, but she contacts her attorneys and has the people who run the billboard, has them legally threatened. Take this shit down. As a result, the people who rented out the billboard, because we're talking about Kentucky, and Kentucky's a very closed area, you got some money, you call the shots all of a sudden. As a result, the people who run the billboard company, they contact Shirley, we can't keep this up. They keep it up a total of 4 days. Okay, keep it up a total of 4 days. And during that time, they get several phone calls. No real information into the murder, but several phone calls. The response is good. Okay, now that was in Perry County. Later on, Shirley rents a billboard in Laurel County, 25 miles away, which is outside of the county. You don't have nearly the type of pull that you had before if you're in Perry County. All right, so that's what happens. As a result, Shirley and June fall out completely, and no discussion, nothing else ever given, taken out of the house for Shirley, anything else like that. What's interesting is Shirley, over the years, this happened in 2010, over the years, Shirley has been the advocate for finding out what happened. That side of the family, Wanda's side of the family, has been adamant. We want this case solved. We want this case solved. The Campbell side of the family, June Campbell Eisen, her son Paul Michael Eisen, and the rest of everyone else on that side, they have kept their mouths shut. They have offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest. Same thing as the Feltner side, the Wanda side of the family. They have offered a $10,000 reward, so $20,000 total. Other than that, nothing has ever been said outside of the Campbell side of the family at all. No media interviews, no sit-downs, no posts, no discussions, no bullshit like that. We keeping our fucking mouths shut is what's going on at that point. All right, so that kind of sets the tone for everything. So 2015. Interview with the daughter Shirley, and that podcast is on YouTube. 2015, Shirley says, she makes the statement that people in Hazard, Kentucky are still scared. And what she says is, she says, hey, I've got friends. We had this idea that on the anniversary of Roy and my mom's murder, that people who were still looking for the truth and wanted to find out what happened, that they would just simply tie a yellow ribbon around their porches. That was our idea. All right. Not a bad idea. Shows that they're still in your thoughts, that you're still hoping that things are going to work out. Shirley, Wanda's daughter, she says in a 2015 interview that people that she spoke to did not want to put those yellow ribbons up because they were scared. They were scared that they would be targeted. That's what she says. All right, so carry on. And we're gonna bear all this in mind as we walk through this stuff. The interviewer who talked to Shirley in 2015, he reaches out to the Kentucky State Police asking for a response. The Kentucky State Police, at this point in time, they start to adopt this attitude of, we are not going to respond. So we had a total of a 5-hour investigation for a double homicide. 5 hours total. 5 hours. Think about that. You're in the house and out in 5 hours, and at that point in time, you don't do anything else. All right? A 5-hour investigation. Kentucky State Police today, they still refer to the case as an open case. It is not classified as a cold case. Now, why is that? The reason why in Kentucky is if it's referred to as an open case, if it's still considered open, you cannot get any Freedom of Information Act documents on that case. If it were declared a cold case, at that point in time, the family or anyone else could file a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request, and they could get all the police documents and start looking at who are the persons of interest. What did the police find inside? What caliber bullets was it? Blah, 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 blah. What work, if any, has law enforcement done? But law enforcement still has not declared it a cold case. 13 years later, after a 5-hour investigation. Okay? Matter of fact, the most recent story on this, Paula Zahn was going to do a story in 2019. Kentucky State Police declined to take part in that story, but they still consider it an open case. But Shirley, in the interview, she makes the statement, if somewhere you don't get a group of people to stick together, nothing is going to change. And this comes into this Eastern Kentucky hazard mentality. And I spoke about this during the Criminal Insights, of people not wanting to get involved, of people not wanting to speak up and speak out. And that allows criminal activity, the bad guys, the predators, the murderers out there. It allows them to get away with the crimes that they've perpetrated. Because here's what I know. I know that people in Eastern Kentucky, some people know exactly what happened. And I know more than that. I know that most people in Eastern Kentucky absolutely have a good goddamn idea of exactly what happened. But nobody's saying anything because nobody wants to get involved. Nobody wants to speak out, speak up, speak, and do the right damn thing. Bear all this in mind as we walk through this stuff. I already talked about after 2010, the murder rate in Hazard, Kentucky. All right, so everything was turned over to June. So here's the thing. I'm a big believer in this thing called Occam's razor. The simplest solution is most likely the correct solution. Just a hypothetical. Husband picks up the phone. He calls 911. Yeah, my wife, she's dead. Somebody killed her. Police show up. Husband sitting on the outside doorstep covered in blood. The simplest solution, the husband killed the wife, is likely to be the correct solution. That is Occam's razor. So looking at this case, you have to look at who benefits most from the death of Roy and Wanda. Roy had lost his first wife. Mildred had died. Roy was 81. He was married to Wanda Feltner, now Wanda Campbell, 79 years old when she was murdered. Who gets Roy's money and its property if Roy dies before Wanda? Wanda does. Wanda gets, if not all of it, she gets a whole shitload of it, right? She gets a lot. So there was absolutely, some of these interviewers have said there was no reason to target Wanda. I would absolutely disagree with that. I think there's a really good reason to target Wanda because she was going to be a beneficiary if Roy passed away before her. And guess what? He probably was going to. So you've got that thought in mind for somebody. And again, this is all theory. This is all theory. Then you look at who's going to benefit from those people who die. And the people who benefit are Roy's relatives, primarily June and her son, Paul Michael Eisen. Now, here's the thing. Looking at this story, I started to search these people up. And you can't find a whole shitload of information about these people. On the screen now, we've got Paul Michael's Facebook page. You can't find a whole shitload of stuff. So I went to Pacer to look for any type of, history. Right now, my Pacer account's shut down. I've got to get it fixed. Not going to be able to get it fixed for a couple of days. So I ended up pulling a regular background check on the guy. Here's the thing. I believe in this broken windows type idea of crime. I believe in it because I reference my own criminal history. With that, you start doing small things like traffic violations, and then it continues to grow and grow and grow until you're like me and you end up the godfather of cybercrime, go to prison, escape prison, serve 7.5 years. Paul Michael's not much different. He's not. He's got a pretty goddamn diverse criminal background that you can't pull up through a regular Google search. But you can pull it up if you start doing some background checks. And certainly when I do Pacer, I'll be able to pull up more of it. So just looking at some of the issues with Paul Michael, driving violations, so driving on suspended, driving without insurance, convictions on possession of illegal substances, that being pills without a prescription, driving while intoxicated alcohol, possession of marijuana. Here's a here's a fugitive. So he had fugitive status at one point. He was convicted of various weapons violations at least 2 times, and he served a lot of federal prison time, not released until 2018, but he was free. And I'm not saying it, but he was free around that same time. So weapons violations. So he was a felon in possession of a firearm. He got convicted on that, gets out of that trouble. And he's picked up for, I think, for drug violations at that point in time. Picked up for drug violations again. They come in, they search the home, find more weapons that his mother, June, and his daddy had bought for him. And they charge the parents with straw man purchases. You're goddamn right they do. They charged the parents with straw man purchases. The way that was disposed of is the parents were not taken to court. They were not prosecuted. Those charges were dropped. Paul Michael goes to prison. He's released 2018. All right, that's what happens. So it goes a little bit further than that. That's what we know. That's simply what we know the guy was convicted of. The truth of the matter is the guy had a history of being a hellraiser in Hazard, Kentucky. And he was linked to several different things at that point in time, which I'm not going to go into, but several different things. Person of interest. And we don't know because Kentucky State Police has never named any. It would seem to me that that would be a primary person of interest. But we don't know because the Kentucky State Police has only done a 5-hour investigation. They've said the case is still open, and they say it's open because, understand us now, we're Kentucky State Police. We do not want to divulge anything like the caliber, bullet, anything else we found in that. We don't want to talk about that because if we keep it secret, we keep it close to our chest. If we don't share that way, if there's ever a confession, we can verify the confession is real. That's what they're saying. I'm not quite sure that I believe that. I think, and again, this is all theory. This is all supposition. You know, Brady, I'm a bit of a writer. I am. And what I like to do is I like to take cases like this, and I like to come up with plots and plans for a book, a fiction book that I plan to write in the future. And here's the way this book actually works for me. And you see if you like it too, because I think it's a good story. I think that I'm going to write a book about a land developer, not in Kentucky, mind you, but in, say, Tennessee, in the Appalachian foothills of Tennessee. I'm going to write a book about a land developer there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know, his name is Coy Ramble. Coy Ramble, that's his name. And Coy, he was not a ne'er-do-well, but, you know, he did some little underhanded shit every now and then. He became very rich. And he had a daughter and a grandson that, well, they were ne'er-do-wells. They absolutely were. And they loved the shit out of his money. So what Coy does, Coy's first wife passes away. And Coy's distraught because he doesn't want to live the rest of his life alone. So he reaches out to a former friend that, you know, maybe he liked a little bit. And he says, you know what? Won't you come up here? We'll get married together. We'll live happily ever after. I got more money than God. And that woman says, you know, I'm not interested in the money, but I like you, Coy. So I think I'll come and I'll live with you because I'm a good woman at the end of the day. And Coy's like, come on down. So they get married. Meanwhile, the daughter of Coy says, you know what? My daddy is liable to die at any friggin' moment. He's 81. She's 79. She's going to outlive his ass. All of his money is going to go to her. What am I going to do? I don't want to work. The grandson is saying, you know what? I like my money too. I mean, you remember that H1 Hummer that I went just over to Nashville, across the hill there, and bought. I like money. I love it. I don't want to work for a living. I don't want his money to go anyplace else but my pocket and your pocket, Mommy. The way I'll write the book, what I'm thinking about is that maybe the day after a holiday, say maybe the day after Christmas, the boy, the grandson, maybe he's got it in his head. Maybe I've not worked that part out yet. Maybe he's working with the mother and they decide, you know, Coy's already 81. He's going to check out soon enough. It won't hurt anything if we, you know, help him out the door a little bit earlier. So maybe the son, maybe the grandson, he goes in. He's got them both sitting in the chair. Maybe he's not even pulled a weapon yet. Maybe he understands at that point in time. Maybe he's high because he likes pills a lot. Maybe he's high. And maybe he's sitting there and he's questioning it. You know, he's having to look him in the face. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this, but by God, I want that money. So maybe what he does is, so he doesn't have to look him in the face, maybe he walks around the back of them as they're sitting in recliners. Maybe he pulls a weapon at that point in time, and maybe he shoots them one by one. I know what you're thinking. Both of them in a recliner, both of them shot in the back. Wouldn't one of them jump up? Well, you've watched too much TV at that point in time. It doesn't take long to shoot one take the barrel over, shoot the other. Maybe, probably not enough time for it to register with the one that wasn't shot first, what was happening. So maybe that's what goes on. And maybe the shooter, that grandson, and this is this book I'm writing, this fiction book. Maybe this grandson is sitting there and he's like, he doesn't know what to do. So he pulls the blinds and he's scared, but he's got a key. So he leaves. And as he leaves, he makes that mistake of locking up the house, because why would you lock up the house? There's no need to. But he makes that mistake of locking up the house, which shows that, hey, somebody had a fucking key. So maybe he makes that mistake. And what does he do? He goes out and he calls his mom, Mom, this happened, because he's scared. He's never done this before. He's done a lot of shit before, but he's never done this before. He's scared to death. And mom's like, what the fuck? I didn't think we really did this. And the mom's freaking out. But she knows she's got to take control of things. She knows she's got to do, if we don't see this through, we're going to go to prison the rest of our fucking lives. So what does she do? Well, she's used to coming down and checking on Coy about every night, just saying hello. So she's got to follow through with that. So she comes in, she knows what time it is, which is kind of odd, but because you look at it, but she makes some mistakes too, because it's nighttime. It's of an evening. They could be taking a nap or whatever, but she's not acting like they're taking a nap. She's immediately acting like something's wrong. She's knocking on the door. She's blowing her horn. She's calling the sheriff's office. I'll have to write it like that, to show that she was screwing up somewhere along the way. So maybe the mom, she's doing this. She's trying to cover her trail. She calls a friend of hers, not the actual sheriff's office, mind you, but just a friend of hers who's in the sheriff's office. He says, I can't come down. I can't help you out. I got somebody that can. She doesn't want to tell him what's happened. So this other guy comes in. So the other guy's like, nothing's disturbed. The house is locked. Probably everything's all right. And they're walking around the house. And she's like, what the fuck? The guy's not even peered in the right window yet. So she has to peer in the window herself. She peers in. Notices the bodies for the cop. He turns it over to Kentucky State Police. Another mistake's happened. What is that mistake? You're going to camp out in the carport for the next 5 hours. You're going to camp out in the carport for the next 5 hours. Why are you doing that? Well, what I would say you're doing that for is you want to make sure you know every fucking thing that's going on all of a sudden. That's what I'm thinking. So 5 hours later, they turn it over to you. That's it? What'd you guys find in there? They're not going to say what they found. Let's take it back. We got everything that we need. You're free to do whatever you want to with the house. I'm free to do whatever I want to. You're free to do whatever you want to. Okay. Get out the match, start burning shit, start wiping things down. Go from there. Of course, the book, the way I'll have to write it, there's this one thing with the daughter, because the daughter of the woman that Coy married, we'll call her Banda. So Banda, she really loves her mom and she really wants to know who murdered her mother. So what does she do? She just on a whim, just so happens, just circumstance, she sees a billboard. She's like, you know what? We could advertise for help, for information. That pisses the daughter of Coy off. And they have a fallout from that point, which is very beneficial for the daughter of Coy. That way she doesn't have to deal with it anymore. That's just a book I'm working on. Just a book. And then what happens is because we're in Kentucky, and that mindset, Hazard, Kentucky, that Eastern Kentucky mindset where everything's closed in, where people don't talk, where people hold things close to the chest and they don't want to get involved. Because of that, because of the money involved, because of the power involved, because of the fear, Kentucky State Police never does anything. No other law enforcement does anything. Nobody says anything. And over time, well, the boy, he goes to prison for a few years. He gets out. He moves to the deep south someplace, lives on the ocean, gets himself a cigarette boat, and lives the life of Riley. And the mom, Coy's daughter, what does she do? Well, she is in that Tennessee town someplace. And she's just dressing all rich and living the life of Riley and flexing her powerful muscles, her powerful financial muscles over top of everybody. But it's a book that I'm working on. But we're not talking about that book, are we? We're talking about the murders of Roy and Wanda Campbell. Now, here's the thing. We're going to close the show out because this show is just an overview. I'm going to come up with a show and we're going to talk about the suspects. We're going to talk about the different suspects that are out there because there are a few. We're going to interview other people. And we're going to raise as much hell as we possibly fucking can about this case. Because here's the thing, Shirley, and I like Shirley. I listened to a 2-hour podcast interview with her. She seems to be a very good person. She seems to be a very optimistic person. She makes this comment where she says that she has faith that someone's conscience will burden them to the point that they will speak up and speak out about what happened. She has faith in human beings, that they will be good enough to someday someone tell exactly what happened. Me, I am not that fucking guy. I do not have faith in the human condition on that. If you're waiting on people to be good about this, you're going to be waiting a hell of a long time, a lot longer than the 13 years that have passed since it happened. So I'm going to appeal to something else. I'm going to appeal to the have and have-nots. That's what I'm going to say. Because Hazard, Kentucky, you can bet your ass it's the town of have and have-nots. And you know what? Those have-nots out there, we know something. You can bet your ass about it. So, hey, don't contact me because, you want to do the right thing. Contact me because you want to see somebody that needs to get it. That's why I'm saying contact me. And I'm not saying, hey, you can contact Kentucky State Police. By all means, contact them. But why don't you contact me too? Brett at thebrettjohnsonshow.com. BRETT at thebrettjohnsonshow.com. Because I don't have a Criminal Thoughts email yet. All right. But contact me with any information that you've got. I promise you this. Unless you want your name mentioned, I will not mention your name. And I promise you this too. You can bet your ass something will happen with that information that you've got, because I too look for revenge on this kind of stuff. I too don't like the idea of the haves getting away with victimizing people and doing the wrong goddamn thing. So by all means, contact me. We're going to be talking to a shit ton of people about this stuff. We're going to turn over every single fucking rock that we can on this. I don't know who did it. I'm working on that book. But I got some ideas. And I think that those ideas, coupled with a guy like me, a son of a bitch like me, because you know what? I have shown I've got the will to follow through with shit. I think you couple all that together, along with people who don't like the idea of the rich and powerful getting away with a bunch of shit. And I think we don't have to have faith in the human condition and people doing the right thing just because their conscience wants them to. I think we can count on people doing the right thing because, by God, they want to see somebody that needs it get it. I'm Brett Johnson. This is Criminal Thoughts. And we've had a few today. We're going to close things out. Usually, I close things out by saying stay safe, stay secure, stay vigilant. We're going to change that a little bit today. Maybe we'll keep it like that. My name is Brett Johnson. This is the Criminal Thoughts Podcast. Speak up, speak out, act, and at the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.